This year, Consumer Reports is hosting our annual meeting at our Connecticut test track. We'll have demonstrations of our testing, and we'll film a Talking Cars about autonomous technology in front of a live audience. Want to join us? Send a short email to talkingcars@consumer.org by October 1st and tell us why you'd like to come and what question you'd want to ask the Talking Cars panel. We'll select a limited number of people who can attend the meeting in late October. Of course, while we'd love to pay your way, we're a nonprofit, so you'll have to cover the costs of your travel. Hope to see you there.
It's National Child Passenger Safety Week, and we talk about all the things you think you know and probably don't know about children in car seats. Next on Talking Cars. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I'm John Linkove.
I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Emily Thomas.
And it's National Child Passenger Safety Week. And, well, first off, I know there's people out here that are saying, okay, I'm going to turn this off. Child, I don't have a kid. I'm not planning on having a kid. I don't want a kid. This is down the road. I'm not even dating anybody. What's going on? But you know what? It actually will apply to you. This is important information because a cousin, a friend, maybe you're a parent, empty nester, and you're going to have a grandkid someday, as you hope, maybe, and it's going to be applicable because there's a lot of information out there. There's some misinformation, and it's a very key part of driving safety, right, Jen?
Yeah, and we're hoping, the tips we're going to share not only equip you for maybe your future, but maybe you can be that person in a group of friends, if your friends are having children, where you not only know the how to do it, sometimes you can sound kind of know-it-all-ish, but the why you're going to do it. And hopefully we can explain some of that in terms of child seat installation.
Because the odds are that people probably are doing it wrong.
Yeah, so the stats still say that of child seat installations, about 46% are still installed wrong. And we're talking only one type of misuse being some aspect of the installation that's going to jeopardize the protection of the child seat. So, and coupled with the fact that 73% of the people believe they did it right. So it's this mix of, I think I've got it,
so they're an
but
expert.
They really
already
don't.
Had a kid, so
right.
now they can put a child in the seat.
Right.
Well, I know because I have two kids.
Right.
You have children. You have children. And we've got the experts on it right here. We have the queen of all things child seats. We have her partner in crime with a PhD.
Dr. Emily.
Dr. Emily. So we're going to dive right in here because there's some shocking tips out there that people need to know about, right?
Yeah. People underestimate the usefulness of their car seat manual. They underestimate the usefulness of, even other resources around them, people that are trained in installing car seats. Most people think that's kind of a joke. They don't know that there's really a certification class that you have to go through. You need to know for your child at their specific height, weight, and age, what's the best seat for them.
And it's not, I have an infant, so I'm in this seat, and then I move at a certain time. It could be
height and weight based. It all depends on how your child
big
grows.
kid who's young, young child older child who's small.
Yep. And you talk about the importance. Believe it or not, in this country still, knowing all we know about child restraints, of the kids that are fatally injured in motor vehicle crashes, still about 40% of them are unrestrained completely. They're not even in a seat. So that's why the National Child Passenger Safety Week still has to exist.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame that we still have to have something like this because you would think that with everything, and especially social media, here's my precious cargo. People would probably put more precious cargo stickers worrying about people around them, baby on board triangles and stuff.
Yeah.
But you're saying that 40% aren't even restrained?
And state laws that say you have to have them restrained, and still they're not restrained. So that's probably the biggest thing, to get people to use them and to use them right.
I think we're going to dive into all that. The first one of the 5 key points, though, we have is tightness. And Emily, tell us, is it what? The seat, the harness is, what is it with tightness? What's important?
Really, it's both. So you want to make sure that your car seat is installed securely to your vehicle because you want to limit the amount of motion that your car seat is able to have in the event of a crash. And then secondly, you want to make sure that the harness for your child is snug. You shouldn't be able to pinch any webbing at their shoulders between your fingers.
Okay, so like something like that.
Right, you do that, and it shouldn't be able to grab any.
If anything comes between your fingers, it's not tight enough.
But what if my child's uncomfortable?
You know what? In reality, what you think is uncomfortable for them probably isn't. And it's also about what you're teaching them from the beginning. So I have a 6-month-old, and I know that my mom, when she was staying with us, I would tighten Micah's harness and she'd be like, you're squishing him, you're squishing him. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And in reality, he's more uncomfortable and squirmy when I first put him into his seat and his straps are loose. Once I snug them up, he's a lot more calm because that's what he thinks is supposed to happen. He's used to it now.
Well, they have space to move, so they're taking advantage of the space.
Exactly.
That happened with Jessica and Matthew the same way.
I never thought of it, but you think of them, little tiny babies are used to being swaddled and held tightly even when they're sleeping. So I suppose that's,
Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah.
Now, what about, so talking on tightness, what about wintertime? We're getting into fall, but, it's getting colder, so that everyone, of course, oh my gosh, the baby's got to be totally snuggled up. And again, we fell into that as well with baby this big and a jacket this big covering her up. But what do you have to do when you have winter clothes?
You want to make sure that whatever coat you're using is not too puffy so that it's creating additional slack between your child and their harness. So you can do a really quick test. You can put their coat on, put them in their harness, snug them up.
In the house or something, right?
Right, in the house. And then, take them out of their car seat, remove the coat, put them back inside, and then click them back into their harness and see how much room there is now between their harness and them. And it'll give you an idea of how much more space there is for them to be able to move without the protection of that harness during a crash. So really the best things that you can do are to, either use a lightweight jacket or sweater when you're harnessing them and put a blanket over them afterwards. Or for some older kids, you can put their coat on backwards over their arms after you've harnessed them in.
That way they can't get into stuff.
That way too, yes.
not a straight jacket, just
Okay. So what about tightness on the seat itself?
So your car seat, it should not move more than 1 inch side to side and front to back, whether you're installing it with the lower latch anchors or with your seat belt.
So
lower latch.
dense here, the latch.
So latch stands for lower anchors and tethers for children.
Okay.
And so if you look at your rear seat where the two cushions meet, if you kind of dig in in that little crevice, there's usually 2 little buttons that'll show a kid. And right there are these 2 metal anchors. So all car seats now, they come with latch connectors. So you can attach your car seat that way. It's important to know, though, that those anchors, they have a 65-pound weight limit, which is your child.
Each anchor?
Together.
Okay.
Right.
So the weight of your child plus their car seat. So if you have a really heavy car seat, you're probably not going to get as much use out of it with the lower anchors, but you can always install with your vehicle seatbelt when that happens.
Okay. So we have the lower anchors, and I know the ones that are kind of the buttons. Those are easy to use. And then you have the hooks. What about for top tethers?
So top tether you usually find either on the seat back or if it's a sedan, you'll find it on the parcel shelf. And really for any forward-facing seat, you always want to install the top tether, whether you're using the seatbelt or the lower anchors. And it's because it has a huge safety benefit. It prevents, or rather it limits the forward motion of your car seat and your child.
It's such a simple step.
Right.
So many, almost half the people still don't do it. And it's just that simple hook up and tighten.
And so how often are you taking a giant convertible seat out of a car? I mean, I did it,
Well,
we do it
we're a
here.
unique
Dave's going to be
case.
doing it. Dave has a little Bambino.
Dave has a newborn,
And Andrew over here is going to have one sometime, and Tolly over there has got a whole brood going on. I think he's building a soccer team. But with the cars here, you're driving a different car every day.
Right.
You're moving a seat in and out. I mean, I was moving a infant carrier and base and a convertible seat.
every day, right?
And I didn't want I was so excited for my children to grow up for that risk. And in fact, I would just sit in a car for a couple of weeks because it's easier than moving the seats.
Right.
So if you're not moving a seat out, why would you not use the top?
Yeah.
Just get in there, wrench on it, and you're done.
And I think 2 things there. One is the latch name, lower anchors and tethers for children. There's one reason people only believe it goes with the lower anchors. That's not true. The benefits from the top tether are with anchors and with seatbelt. So we say put it on for all forward facing. And they forget about it because it's not as visible as the main installation piece, which is the belt.
And also, I mean, I can imagine SUVs such a huge market. You know, when Latch came out,
Right.
different sales market, much more sedan based and such. Now SUVs, behind the seat.
Yeah.
Pickup trucks, really hard.
Right. So you don't see it. Right. And trucks are a unique, but not hard, but it just takes a couple steps to do it. Yeah.
We talked about rear and front facing, but there is a key part of rear facing that a lot of people aren't thinking about, you know, because they think, you know, I want to look at my little baby. I want to, you know, have the extra mirror and such and see that happy bundle of spit
Joy.
and vomit and I don't know, whatever else,
Joy.
crying,
John, it's
going on
joy.
in the back. Enjoy. Jen, what about rear facing longer?
It is safer to keep your child rear facing than forward facing. So you go back, again, my youngest is 13 years old. I turned him around at 1 year, and that was the recommendation at the time. But now, and I'll let Emily talk to the science of it in a little bit, but many states now are passing state laws. One just recently passed here in the state of Connecticut that says you have to keep your baby rear facing longer. And what that means is, one, they're probably going to outgrow that carrier.
That's convenient.
Your
that
convertible
convert-
seat is your next type of seat, and convertible is a seat that starts rear facing and then can go forward facing. It
Yep.
can go either way. You're going to need that convertible seat because now they're taller, heavier, and you're going to have to keep them rear facing till the age of 2. And I'm going to let Emily talk about the science of why it's safer.
The benefit of being rear facing is that in the event of a crash, you know, the crash forces, they're spreading out over a larger surface area. They've got the entire shell to spread out over. And rear facing kind of helps to limit the motion of the head, which in turn is protecting the spine, you know, and it's keeping the child better contained within the protection of their car seat itself.
And so you, again, I know some, having had the children and having had you help me through this. So they have like a giant bowling ball and their neck is basically a pencil.
Right.
In theory.
It's not whipping
Yeah.
forward.
You know, so they don't have the muscle control to hold their head up that we all think we do in a accident.
Exactly. And a lot of parents, they, like you said, they want to be able to see their kid, or they're worried because they see that, well, you know, my kid is 1.5 and their legs are all folded up against the back seat and, you know, they just look so uncomfortable. And I tell parents they might look uncomfortable, but they're not, because they're
Very
more
bendy.
They're very bendy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, they bounce. I mean, you know, we've seen that all. You know, I actually had that event, daycare provider. So with first child, Jessica, who's now 7.5, you know, new parent, you're like, I don't know. And my parents, you know, they would come up and visit and such, but they weren't around there for immediate question. And she's like, oh, you got to turn them around as soon as possible because, you know, they fold their legs and they're just so uncomfortable. And you're like, oh, well, you watch my child all day and the company trusts you, so you must know what you're talking about. And then I think I said that to Jen, and I think I don't know if it was a slap open-handed or kind of a punch,
I
but
might
it
have
was
just punched
we
you,
stopped
but
that quickly.
But this is our whole point about this whole segment is empowering people to have a little bit more knowledge that they encounter someone like your daycare provider and they're like, nah, you're not quite right on that.
We did touch on the third of the 5 key points, top tether straps. So
Right.
is there anything else that we want to add that we kind of mixed it up a little bit?
Yeah, so the other topic that's probably the biggest right now is booster seat use. So again, we talked about state laws. Many states have booster seat laws that are now 8 years old, 80 pounds. The whole thing, the whole science behind boosters is they're in the vehicle seatbelt now, but it doesn't fit them quite right. So the whole idea is this belt to bone. Yeah, you don't want, what do when it's across their neck or across their shoulder? They
Pull it,
take
right,
it
or-
and put it behind them. So now they don't have the protection of the shoulder belt at all. You want it kind of midway across their clavicle, their collarbone, belt to bone. And then the other big issue is at their hips. When they're shorter, the lap belt portion tends to ride up on their belly. There's a whole set of injury called seatbelt syndrome that comes from, in a crash, that seatbelt actually cutting into their abdomen and injuring internal organs. So the whole benefit of the booster is it raises them up so they get that belt to bone engagement at their hip, at their collarbone. Again, kids are all different sizes. I happen to have a tall, thin kid who thought she was ready, but she didn't meet the weight limits of our state law. I used to joke, you're going to the prom in that booster seat, but it really
Sure,
does
she'd
have
love that.
benefits. And truly convenience-wise, they can see out the window better.
yeah.
They have side wings to lean on in high back versions, which we do recommend high back versus the backless versions. But if backless is all you have, that's great too. Still better than nothing. So boosters are big. Again, state laws are driving that, where you have to keep your kid in a booster seat longer.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big thing for Matthew to be in a booster because his big sister had a booster.
Right.
And he's catching up height-wise. So, yeah, now they're both in a booster. He's just that much tall. He's 5.5, but he's almost as tall as a 7.5.
Right. So he may outgrow the harness of a harnessed seat.
Yeah.
Even there, I hear parents saying a lot of times that, oh, well, I have a really tall kid, but, they're maybe 4 or 5 or 6. And they're like, but they're really tall. And so, it's okay if they're not in their booster anymore. And there's this
totally fine.
Not that you do that at all, John.
No.
But there's this misconception that, it's really one factor alone that makes it so they can be out of their booster. Either they're, a really heavy kid, or, they're a really tall kid, or I think that they're old enough. But in reality, it's, it's a combination of the three, but especially it's the combination of age and height.
Yeah.
So while Matthew might be tall for a 5.5-year-old,
Sure.
he is still only 5.5. And biomechanically speaking, physiologically speaking, his body is not strong enough to withstand the crash forces of the vehicle seatbelt being applied by itself. His bones need to be stronger. So we really encourage that, you keep your children in a booster seat until they're between the ages of 8 to 12 and they're at least 4 feet 9.
Yeah. And Emily brings up a point. Don't be wanting to rush through these stages. The truth is, every step is probably a little less safe in terms of the next progression. So rear facing's a little safer than forward facing. Harnessed is a little safer than booster. So don't be in a rush to get your kids whipped through all the stages.
Well, that kind of leaves it into our final key point is that, don't think you know all or even any of it, and you think like, oh, well, I knew this, I knew that, and I'm going to put them into the booster and they'll be fine. Or I'll take the back off the booster. They don't need to have the guide, right?
Right. Don't rush. We joke, which we talked about Dave and his new baby. Dave sits near where we sit and he listens to this stuff, maybe half listens all day, every day. He literally sits in our area. 6 months ago or a few months ago, he had his baby and let me tell you, he got it all wrong.
Osmosis does not work.
He came and we went, what the heck are you doing?
It was upside down.
So again, that would be our final point is absolutely, Emily talked about these child passenger safety technicians. Seek them out. They're usually law enforcement, fire department, nurses, or just techs in your area.
So besides just is there a general, just go to the fire department or the hospital?
You can inquire, ask your hospital, ask your local law enforcement. But if you can't, safekids.org on the web and safercar.gov, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety site. You put in your zip code, they can direct you to either a technician or a checkpoint in your area.
So now I can hear it. You've lasted through the whole show and you're going, back in my day.
Oh, yeah.
It's nanny state. The government regulations. We lived through it. My parents put me in a box and we drove all around the country and I lived. But so what do you say to that? These people the naysayers, like it was fine before. Why do we need these multi-$100 seats that, serve one purpose and then you have to get rid of it if it's been bumped or something?
Yeah, and I lived through that. So we've talked on I was the kid riding around in the way back with absolutely nothing, and we pulled some stats from 1975. I was 9 years old in 1975. So I was that kid. And yes, I survived and some of the people watching survived, but many others didn't. Yeah. And the truth is that child passenger motor vehicle occupant fatalities are about 52% lower than they were in 1975. And when you talk about rate, there's a lot more kids. I talk about we spend a lot more time with our kids in the car now.
Yeah, more miles driven every year, sure.
Both parents are working. There's all these sports. There's multiple play dates. There wasn't getting off the bus and going home and hanging out. Kids are in the car all the time. So that's despite the additional vehicle miles traveled that the kids are having. So yes, people survived, but many didn't. And things are much, much safer, particularly with the use of child restraints.
In reality, it's also because we know more now. The automotive safety industry has done so much research, and they've learned that what we thought before isn't necessarily the case now. You know, we better understand the biomechanics of the human body. We understand the differences between kids and adults and how their bodies react in a crash. We know that kids are not just small adults anymore. Yeah. And that was a line of logic in the science before we had the information that we do now. And so now that we're equipped with more information, we can better design car seats to better protect children. We can better design vehicles to better protect the occupants. So maybe it's different from how it was when people grew up in the 70s or the 80s. But that doesn't mean that, it's bad. In reality, it's a much better, safer environment for children these days.
And you wouldn't drive around without a seatbelt. You wouldn't do dangerous things without the protective gear, play a sport or whatever. Why would you not do that with your child?
Right. Exactly. I just imagine this scenario where you skimped or you didn't put it in securely, or you said, just this trip, I'm just not going to use a child restraint.
I think every parent has.
And something happens, and how would you feel if it was on you that you could have done something more?
Exactly.
So one more time, what are those resources that people should go to online, and who should they ask for help with getting their seat installed the proper way and making sure? And it's not something to be scared of. I mean, I asked Jen to do it. I didn't go to a fire department to do it. Dave apparently asked multiple times and had extra lessons. Where should people go?
Go to safekids.org. Safe Kids has coalitions throughout the country. They organize these seat check events where you can go for free to have your car seat installation checked, to have someone help you out. Go to safercar.gov/car seats, where you can find local technicians and local seat check events in your area. And you know what? If you can't find something on the web, call up your local fire department, call up your local police department. A lot of times there's at least one person on staff that's been trained in how to do this, and it's well worth the effort.
I'm surprised.
Even if you think you've got it all right, it's probably worth the check.
It's always worth a double check, right?
Exactly.
I was going to say, I'm surprised that we haven't said, neither of you have promoted the content that you've created, because on consumerreports.org, we have a ton of free child safety information.
Given, John.
Yeah, but you have to promote yourself. But we also have, ratings of all the child seats we test.
Right.
We have a whole list of information on our test protocol.
Tips for installation.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. Consumerreports.org.
Well, that's it for this episode of Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. For more information on the resources we talked about, check the show notes below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. It's National Child Safety Passenger something in the car week.